Hello, juniors. I hope that you're having a good finals and that this tutorial finds you in a good place regarding grades for your junior year. Um, I very much appreciate you coming in and taking time out of your final schedule to listen to the end result of the TOK process that the seniors have currently experienced. And they will be receiving their grades this week, while you guys are just sort of starting on that journey. Many of you have a very solid background because of your time in IB so far and the strengths that you've gathered as a result of excellent teachers regarding the nature of debate, nature and control of rhetoric, public speaking, and I've been very heartened by the kinds of interactions that you displayed during our week together. So I'm really excited about this new group that you guys represent. I want to give you some background into this winter assignment that I think will benefit you in developing sort of a basic foundation while we enter the course. I had a student from years ago who just recently texted me asking advice about the nature of debate, since he often hears me have a conversation either online or in person with people who have very different beliefs than me. And I think one of probably the best advice that I had given him is the idea of listening and the idea of asking questions. And both of those very simple tasks that a lot of you learned in kindergarten, just like our puzzle analogy, understand that implicitly, and yet oftentimes we find ourselves stuck trying to defend or trying to get emotional in a way that sort of undermines our thinking on topics. What good is knowledge if we're not able to communicate it? And so that's sort of the basis of this winter assignment, is getting an understanding of what it means to communicate simple philosophical truths or epistemological truths in such a way that kind of makes sense or is even sort of within a tone or rhetoric that is lighthearted. And so you will be reading Plato and the Platypus, which is the beginning of a joke. Plato and the platypus walk into a bar. The nature of this book is a joke book. It's humor. And so you'll be reading about sort of the basic introduction to all sorts of very complex philosophical arguments in such a way as to, through anecdote and through parody and satire, in such a way that it will hopefully become a little bit more personable and a little bit more approachable, in the sense that for you as a high school student just starting on your journey, you'll be able to appreciate it a little bit better. I'm going to read what's on the screen right now. As you can see, this is going to be your prompt. And I want to start again with this sort of justification for what TOK is going to be, what theory of knowledge will be about regarding the goals and sort of the trajectory of the course in terms of what you need to apply to the knowledge that you're gaining. So let me read it real quick. It says, philosophy is so often presented as a dry, armchair intellectual pursuit that often disengages and even divides the emotion, the dignity, and the character of human knowledge. For instance, I've heard philosophical debates where people attempt to condescend to their opponents, or to show because they have more knowledge of fallacy or rhetoric that they, by definition, are better or smarter or more worthy of listening. And I don't think that to be true. Those who spend their hours contemplating existential questions often find themselves as on an island. And this is often what you will experience as a high school student. You might already recognize that you are different than those around you. Your diploma, that is, you're trying to earn an IB diploma, is by definition a completely different route than your peers. And many times as you learn more and are working harder than the students around you, it starts to feel like you're sort of isolated from them. And oftentimes we want to then in those conversations lower our expectations of ourselves so that we appear to be more like those around us. We worry about being different. And I think philosophy in particular, and this course will kind of also further divide, because you'll have a greater sense of awareness regarding your own beliefs and the questioning of those beliefs. And it can make you feel a little bit separated from those who sort of implicitly judge or implicitly believe things without any evidence. So we're trying to bridge that gap and make people feel comfortable still in conversation with you, and to make you feel comfortable with yourself, even with a high rigor. People find themselves as on an island, unable to communicate with those around them. This is not the trajectory we are in this course. Our goal is to present the foundations of academic knowing in a functional way, so as to develop confidence in your interactions with others. In the process, you will develop a level of empathy. That is, you will identify with people, knowing that maybe the conversations you have, even with your parents or with family members, knowing that you were also once like them, or they are by definition on a different journey than you regarding their own intellectual pursuit. And that you can learn from them, even though you might have different levels of knowledge than they do. And they, of course, might be more intelligent in various ways, and that you can hopefully approach everybody without sort of a sense of division or a sense of animosity. In the process, you will develop a level of empathy with other viewpoints, because you will begin to understand the limitations of knowing. As we ask questions, you're going to maybe feel a bit of a frustration in the beginning, knowing that so many of the questions that perhaps you took for granted as being answered are actually still in debate, or there's a level of uncertainty that might make you uncomfortable. Conversations are full of questions. They're not full of answers. And that is the nature of real and mature debate, or real and mature conversation even. This is what I hope to instill throughout the next 2 semesters. So here's your prompt. You need to understand these basic terms, basic ideas, basic categories of knowing before we even begin. So this is your task. In Plato and the Platypus Walk into a Bar, Understanding Philosophy Through Jokes, several important foundational ideas are presented regarding the nature of understanding, knowledge, and the ways in which we as human beings interact in the world. In proper MLA formatting, complete the following tasks. Number 1. After reading the book, consider and analyze one concept in each of the following areas: philosophy, epistemology, reason, and ethics. So I'm going to highlight those: philosophy, epistemology, reason, and ethics. Sift each concept into a single overarching question. Avoid being simplistic. So your question should be an open-ended one, and it should also be nuanced enough to allow for conversation, not a definitive answer, at least not a definitive answer yet. So your question should be overarching. It should be sort of a generic thematic question. To what extent does something exist, or to what extent does reason, and then you can fill in the blank as you need to. These are questions that have lots of answers. Next, articulate your own view about these topics according to your prior knowledge. Knower's perspective is very important to TOK. In fact, it's one of the rubric forms that people's assessments, your assessments, will be graded on. Include specific examples from your own life, especially in any arguments or interactions you have had with people around you. If you don't argue with people, or you don't interact at a sort of a higher intellectual level, that might be a problem. Why are you in TOK, or why are you in IB in general, if we're not to begin to be active in our pursuits of knowledge? You should be getting excited about the things that you're learning in all your classes. I know it's hard to sometimes as a high school student, because expectations outside or in popular culture or your friends want to make things lighthearted or simplistic. And I know you need to have breaks from time to time with the intellect. But I want to try and encourage you to actually have real conversation outside of class. Get excited about the things you're learning about. Feel the sort of the true sort of joy and the creativity of intellectual thinkers behind you, and start getting into a practice of lifelong learning that sort of gets you sort of geeked out about the things that you will experience the next several years in your journey through education. That should really be your goal. If you're not having fun doing the IB and it's only hard work and you're trying the hardest you can to put things off and to just hang out and do nothing, then this shouldn't be the diploma for you. Accomplishments should come with a sense of identity and a sense of wanting, not because someone's forcing you or because you think that society requires it or because you just want the accomplishments or accolades to boast. That's not a proper IB student or mentality. So have these conversations with people around you, and if you have, then document them now. If you haven't, consider how you might do that this following semester. Lastly, discuss how concepts presented in the book changed or reinforced your current understanding of each topic. So again, changed or reinforced. Is there something that sort of questioned something that you already implicitly knew, or is there something that maybe has reinforced something that you knew already with greater evidence? Include a prediction towards areas of interest in the future as a conclusion. So what are some areas that the book might be inciting in you to sort of enjoy about TOK? What might you be excited to learn about? Here's a suggested outline. Each paragraph should be of a different area of the book. So for instance, the first paragraph will be about philosophy, and then it'll go down from there. Philosophy, have your question about philosophy, your view and examples of philosophy, conversations, and then your view of an author and whether or not you've, the view of the author and whether you've changed or reinforced your views of that particular philosophical point that you're pulling out. So do that for each of the different paragraphs. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Philosophy is the first one, and philosophy is the idea of making questions that are disinterested questions, as Aristotle says, to sort of take a view or to consider a position without actually having to believe it. Questions about the world is sort of a detached idea in which you're not looking at your beliefs necessarily. You are considering and speculating on how the nature of existence operates. This is a questioning class, and so philosophy is the foundation of that. Once we start understanding through questions some basic, maybe implicit assumptions or different language regarding how the questions operate, we start putting them into categories in which we can then begin maneuvering and using them as tools to understand the world. And this is what epistemology is. Epistemology, again, is the sort of branching out of different ways in which to think. And from epistemology comes different ways to think regarding the areas of knowing, such as science and mathematics. What differentiates them? What differentiates science from the arts, for instance, as well? They have different epistemologies in a great branching tree. Reason is a particular language set. It uses language to identify basic presuppositions of the universe. It also is a way in which the language reacts almost mathematically to the basic laws of logic and contradiction. Things need to be coherent and to be valid and sound from a reasonable perspective. It's the mind working through what can and can't be in existence. Religion is a bit controversial and is newer to the TOK model, but it has some implicit foundations in intuitive knowledge, that is, or indigenous knowledge as well. Intuitive being instinctual, that is, it's something that we sort of are born with, this expectation that there is an important binding thing that we can't necessarily explain through any particular scientific philosophy or evidence, but nevertheless we experience, maybe an emotion as well. Indigenous knowing would have something to do with cultural components, real concrete things that we experience in culture, even though it's not scientifically meaningful in a sense from a scientific language standpoint. And then ultimately the concept of the divine, or whether there is a metaphysical reality, there is a world that is not dictated by the constraints of science or from the material world. And then lastly with religion is also the ritualistic components, and that's part of the culture. Ethics is very important in the sense that you are looking at what's not only right and wrong, but might also be good and bad. So the questions of how we consider the good. Does the good exist? And if so, how do we determine the good? These are questions that the book explores and the different thinkers who explored them. Each of these requires then you to do some basic epistemology, and I've given you that outline. So spend some time in the book. Even though you have a break, you still should be actively thinking on these topics, getting yourself prepared for the questions that will await you. I look forward to teaching this course. This is the third time that I will be going through it. And every time I get a better sense of the material. It is a very broad course. And I know zero period is a difficult time in which to talk about philosophy. So the quicker we're able to move into the routine of in the habit of talking about big issues and being okay with that, even at an early time, the more fun and the faster the course will go for you, especially if you have a lot of work that week. I hope this has been helpful. Please email me if there's any questions concerning the assignment or your ability to get a hold of the copy of the assignment. Make sure that you follow on ManageBack anything that's going on in the course. I'm showing you right now grade 12, but grade 11 is what you guys will be under. And when you log in, it'll have my class already set up for you. That's where you're turning in every assignment for me. You need to scan every piece of notes or take the notes on the iPad and make sure to save them in a format that I can open in a computer. On a calendar, you can check your calendar, but there should also be an assignment list view. And you can see, for instance, that in October we had several assignments that are come due. November, you can see I have quite a bit of things here, including notes from the semester, your assessment drafts. And then finally in December it would be our final literature circle, our literature survey, and our presentations. It's important to keep up on these from a weekly basis and don't fall behind, because I'm unable to determine a grade if you're not in a good standing with these projects. So please keep up with them. It will help instruct you in the future assessments that you'll be taking next semester. All right, well, hopefully you've looked at this before your finals, and I say good luck to you on the rest of the week, and happy holidays if I don't hear from you again until after the middle of January. Take care.